I'm Jeremy, one of the members of our preaching team here at Crossbridge, and my hope for everybody here this morning, if you're a guest, if you're a regular attender, is that you'll join us this morning in taking one step closer to God. And I have to admit that as much as I love that we have had 2 services over the last couple of years, and it gives everyone an opportunity to either serve at a service and then attend a service, or to be able to make it to a service when your kid has sports or other events, I really enjoy that we're right now just one service together, because I like seeing a lot of you that I don't normally get to see. My family, we're not really early risers, so you'll never see us at a 9 o'clock service. So I enjoy seeing all of you that come to the 9 o'clock service normally, and actually seeing you right now. But I'll admit that I've been enjoying the one service for another reason, and that's because last week as I watched you come in, I noticed that a lot of you would come in, and suddenly you'd realize that somebody else in the other service normally sits in your bench, your spot, and you came in and you realized that person made it here before you, and you had that moment of, now I gotta figure out someplace else to sit. And so I secretly enjoyed that. And maybe this is a little encouragement to just show up a little earlier. I'm just throwing that out there, a little sink that in. So yeah. But whatever reason, I really enjoy that we're all here together this morning. And I'm really excited that this week we're continuing our This is Crossbridge series, where we're looking at the core values of Crossbridge. These core values, like bumpers in a bowling alley, are what help guide everything that we do at Crossbridge, where we pour our time and our resources into. Our core values being intentionally relevant, relationally transparent, family-focused, Holy Spirit-empowered, and unashamedly biblical. These are what help define who we are as a church. It's what makes Crossbridge. And this is one of my favorite series that we do because it's an opportunity to talk about who we are and why we do what we do. Over the last 2 weeks, we've covered being intentionally relevant and relationally transparent. And this week, we get to talk about family. And I'm really pumped to talk about this and talk about family because I really love my family. And most of the time, I like them too. And I'm lucky because they love me and they have a whole lot of grace because I think that most of the time they like me too. So I understand that my family has a lot of grace because most of the time I don't deserve that. But I'm really excited to do this message on family. And I was excited as I started to prepare, but then as we were preparing, something funny happened. As we started to plan this message, Jimmy and I were sitting down together talking about this, and the part that seemed the most simple, defining family, turned out not to be so simple at all. In fact, what we call family, it differs from culture to culture, from generation to generation, and even from individual to individual. 50 to 60 years ago, if you asked somebody what family was, in the United States, they probably would say it's a man and a woman who are married and they have 2.3 kids. But in South America, Asia, the Middle East, Africa, a lot of these places, family would have included grandma and grandpa, lots of siblings, aunts and uncles, cousins. And today, family may include an ex-spouse, a new spouse, step-parents, step-children, foster or adopted children, all sorts of gender combinations. So our definitions of family seems to be not so defined. And the problem that this creates starts to become apparent pretty quickly. And in preparing the message, it became kind of difficult because if our core values are what guide us, there are bumpers, then having poorly defined bumpers aren't very useful. Can you imagine trying to bowl down a lane where your bumpers aren't defined? Maybe they're crooked, they're moving around, some of them are missing in some places, they're thicker, they're thinner. A poorly defined bumper might be worse than having no bumpers at all. So, thinking about this, we thought maybe the best place we can go to start is the Bible. So before we look at a parable of Jesus, I think it's important to see what he says about family. So in Matthew chapter 12, verses 46 and 48, we find this story. As Jesus was speaking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside asking to speak to him. Someone told Jesus, "Your mother and your brothers are standing outside and they want to speak to you." Jesus asked, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers?" All right, that's not exactly helpful, is it? Jesus' mom and his brothers come to see him, and his response seems to indicate that either he's really confused or he's incredibly dismissive. So where do we even start when one of our core values is to be family-focused, and even Jesus doesn't seem to clearly define what family is? Well, if you've been with us or watched online the last couple of weeks, then you already know that we've been taking a look at our core values by diving into the parables of the Bible. These are the stories that Jesus told that use something familiar to help explain something unfamiliar or confusing. So this week, we're going to turn to the book of Luke. if you have your Bibles with you or you have it on your app, you can turn to or scroll down to Luke, and we're going to be in chapter 14. Or we'll also have it up on the screen for you. Now, to set this up, Jesus is at the house of the religious leaders of the time. They're on the Sabbath, and there's a large group of people that have been invited to this house, and they're all there attending. And Jesus is sitting there, and he notices that the people that are there, they're all very preoccupied with their position. You see, where you sit at the table indicated how important you were. So Jesus notices this, and he starts to give some advice on having humility and being humble and humbling yourself. And he starts to tell this parable in verse 16 after talking about that. This parable is, a man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, "Come, the banquet is ready." But they all began making excuses. One said, "I have just bought a field and must inspect it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out. Please excuse me." Another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." The servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious and said, "Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." After the servant had done this, he reported, "There's still room for more." So his master said, "Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come, so that the house will be full." Now, we also find this story, or maybe a very similar telling, in the book of Matthew. And there, Jesus describes this banquet as a wedding feast that the king is throwing for his son. Now, if you've ever planned a wedding, you know just how much time and effort goes into coming up with that list of who's coming. And you're inviting family and friends, people that are close to you. Well, mostly. You'll probably have to invite 98-year-old Aunt Edith, who you met once when you were 7 years old, and maybe your spouse's ex, or a neighbor that you mostly tolerate. But this list is supposed to represent the people that you want to celebrate with, the ones that you believe that you are closest to, family. But when the day of the banquet arrives, all of those who are invited, the people that were believed to be family, aren't showing up. And not only are they not showing up, but they're offering pathetic excuses to get out of it. So let's look at these excuses. One said, "I have just bought a field and must inspect it." Another said, "I have just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out." Another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." Now, the people of this time would have been very familiar with these agricultural references. So they would have immediately understood that these first 2 excuses, these are total garbage. Nobody's going to go buy a field without having first gone and looked at it. Just like nobody's going to go buy 10 oxen without making sure that they're capable before they buy the oxen. And why in the world would someone who's just gotten married not be able to go to another wedding? This doesn't make any sense. The ones that have been treated like family not only weren't showing up to celebrate and be part of the wedding, they're downright insulting. So what does the king do? He begins to redefine who family is. He tells his servants to go back out into the town and begin inviting the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And when they've done that, and there's still room at the banquet, he sends his servants back out to continue inviting those outside the city. When the people of the king expected to be there with him celebrating reject him, the king invited people that he knew would come. The poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame, the outcast would gladly choose to enter into a relationship with the king and participate at the banquet. You see, ultimately what the king knew was that what matters in the end is choosing to be there. He knew that he had plenty of room at the banquet table, and when those he thought had every reason to join him rejected him instead, he opened his doors and he invited everyone to come. Jesus' story of what family looks like is a whole lot bigger than what we normally think of when we think of family. If we go back to Matthew, where Jesus seems confused as to who his mother and brothers are, we see that right after he asks, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers?" Jesus points to his disciples and he says, "Look, these are my brothers. This is my mother and brothers. Anyone who does the will of my Father is in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Now, this isn't meant to be dismissive of Mary and his brothers. Jesus is simply saying that his family, our family, isn't limited to those who are married to, or we share blood with, or we are legally tied to. Our eternal family are those who have chosen to take that step in their faith and who have decided to follow Jesus. This isn't a family that's limited by contract, genetics, emotions, status, or any other limitation. This is a family that's open to all. The only requirement is that you have to choose to show up. So take a moment and look around you at the people around you. Right now, I'm being serious. And in fact, we're going to do something that may feel just a little bit awkward for you. We don't normally do something like this, but I'd like to take just a minute or two and actually have you stand up and simply say hi to the people around you. And if you don't know them, just introduce yourself. We have the name tags, and maybe glance at the name tag, introduce yourself, and take a moment right now. If you're watching online, leave a comment. All right, so hopefully you got to talk to people around you, say hi to maybe some people you know, people you don't know. But if you were a little outside of your comfort zone right now, sorry, not sorry. The bottom line is that if you're here today, you're family. And sometimes, you know what, family's a little awkward and uncomfortable. So we spent the last 10 or 15 minutes just trying to define what the word family is to try and solidify this bumper for our core value of being family focused. But for our definition, essentially comes down to family being a group of people who have come together and chosen to follow Jesus. Then what does it mean to be family focused? And how can this guide us? Let's start by looking at the makeup of our church family. On any given Sunday, about 50 to 60% of those that are here are actually 18 or under. That number gets even higher if we include the students who come to youth group on Sunday nights whose families don't come here on Sundays. For comparison, from data pulled from a study done in 2015 by Duke University, that percentage for the average church is between 16 to 29%, depending on the denomination of the church, compared to 50 to 60% at Crossbridge. So our typical Sunday is made up of a whole lot of kids, which is outside the norm for most churches. Now, our area does tend to trend somewhat in that direction, at 31% of the Woolwich area being aged 18 or younger, which is about 1.3 times higher than the national average. But our church goes even further than that. Bottom line is, y'all got a lot of kids. And then about 66%, that's 2 out of 3 people in this area, are married. 5 to 8% of people have been divorced. About a quarter have never been married. And somewhere between 1 to 6% are widowed. Overall, I'd say that our church is pretty close to those numbers, although unfortunately, we're definitely a little bit higher on divorce rate. For the most part, I'd say that our church looks like a lot of our area. And the biggest item that sticks out is that our area has a lot of kids, and our church takes that even one step further. So what does our Crossbridge family look like? For the most part, it's a lot of younger married families with kids under 18. Our area in general skews younger, and our church reflects that. A number of families have dealt with divorce, a small number with the death of a spouse, and a decent number of unmarried individuals. We also have a solid percentage of families with foster or adopted children, and a not insignificant number with children that have special needs. When we look at who lives in our area and who is here at Crossbridge, I think that being family focused for Crossbridge means 4 things in particular. First, I think that being family focused means that if you are here, you are family. You matter, and we want to support you. Whether you are 3 years old or 80 years old, whether you're single, married, divorced, or widowed, whether this is your first Sunday here or you've been here for 15 years, you're part of our family. Being part of our family means both that we support you and care for you, but also that we want you to be a contributing member of our family by serving, loving, and supporting others as well. That support can come in tons of different ways, including support in relationship in small groups, personal relationships with others, prayer for each other, outreach, our meals ministry, and lots of other ways. Our desire is to support each member of our family and help everyone grow in their faith. Being family focused means that the people around you, the people that you just shook hands with, should matter to you and to everyone else here. When one person hurts, we all hurt. When one person celebrates, we celebrate as a family. Nobody gets left out, and nobody sits idly. So we talk all the time about getting plugged into small groups, about asking for prayer from the elders, for others in the church, about finding a place to serve. Are we always perfect in these things? No. But we'll always do our best to be family focused by making sure that everyone here knows that if you are here, you are family. Secondly, just like the king who has thrown his door open to all who will come, our doors will always be open to anyone and everyone. All are welcome to come and be part of our family. Being family focused doesn't mean that we're going to be a church that's just focused on those who are already here, because we'll always be inviting others into our family. There'll always be another seat at our banquet table, and we will always go out seeking the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame, the outcast, the hurting, the brokenhearted. We will throw our doors open and invite others to join us. When we host an amazing dance and dinner for 100 individuals with special needs and their families, we are loving them and inviting them to join God's family. When we bring in hundreds of kids for a week of singing and dancing and skits and crafts at VBS, we're inviting them and their family to join us at the table. When we have 1,300 people come out so that their kids can enjoy hot dogs and games and candy at Trunk or Treat, we're inviting them and their families to come join us, to come join our family. Being family focused doesn't mean being insulated and turning away from the outside world. It means having our doors open like Jesus and inviting others because all are welcome to come and be a part of our family. Third, being family focused means we support nuclear families, which is typically defined as a couple and their children and those relationships. This is probably the one that seems most obvious and the most plain meaning, and the one that probably most of you thought of when we talked about how do we define family. As I discussed earlier, our church in our area are largely made up of youngish families and a whole lot of kids. And as anyone who is married or has been married, has kids or is a kid can tell you, being part of a family can be really hard. There's thousands of books on marriage and thousands of books on parenting. Well, why is this? Well, you don't write books about stuff that's easy. This is hard. As a church, we recognize that, and to focus on church family necessarily means that we need to support marriages, to support parents and their kids. Every year as we're planning our messages and series for the year, we'll always find that we have a series on relationships and or a series on parenting. You'll find these themes woven through a lot of our other series and individual messages. The Bible has a lot to say about relationships, including marriages and parenting, that we're constantly doing our best to communicate this in an intentionally relevant way. Our events are designed to support families by giving them things to do together, by offering rest to weary parents, or simply by celebrating children. And our student ministries not only help guide our kids in their faith journey, they help provide our kids with relational tools and provide parents with tools on how to talk with our kids about these things. Now, this doesn't mean that we're ever going to do this in a way that shames or ignores those who are unmarried, divorced, widowed, or childless. We love everyone right where they are and believe that every person has value and so much to offer. Crossbridge wouldn't be Crossbridge without each one of you. We recognize that sometimes not being 30 to 45 years old, married with kids, can make you feel like you're on the outside looking in. But I can assure you that that's never by design or by intent. That's why our messages, they'll always be unashamedly biblical, and we'll always talk about certain things in a certain way, but we'll always seek to be inclusive of everyone where they are right now. So a message or series on marriage won't just speak to husbands and wives. It will include something relevant for those who are single, divorced, or widowed. A message on parenting, it's going to have something relevant for those who are parents, but also something for our kids, or something that we can use in any relationship. And I'll just address the elephant in the room. I know that we don't have a whole lot of gray hair at Crossbridge, even if we include Jimmy in that mix. And I know that for those of you who are here that are, more well-seasoned in life, can feel at times like you're on the outside looking in. I absolutely understand why it may feel that way, but what I'll say is that you are so incredibly valuable to our community. Anytime someone with more life experience than me wants to give me advice or just maybe assure me that life isn't easy and it's filled with mistakes, I'm going to be listening intently. As a church, we absolutely need the point of view from those who have been here and done that. I can tell you that the voice of experience in a small group setting is always welcomed. You don't ever have to feel like you don't fit in because of your age. You have a place there because of that. Lastly, very closely related to supporting a nuclear family, being family focused here at Crossbridge means we invest in our kids and our youth. Part of this is based on the simple reality that if 50 to 60% of our church family here at Crossbridge is our kids and our youth, then we need to focus on supporting those that are here that are part of that because they're our family. But our reasons go far beyond that for investing in our kids and our youth. If we're going to support marriages and parents, we need to be heavily invested in our kids. Parenting's hard. And the more support we can provide each other by loving and instructing each other's kids, the more that we support both the kids and the parents in our church family. We also recognize that the children are the future of Crossbridge. Our family doesn't just grow by going out and bringing others in and inviting others in. It grows and continues to live through our children. If we neglect to invest in our students, then we're likely going to begin to look like all the other churches, or most of the other churches in the United States. And the statistics aren't pretty. According to the Pew Research Group, the average age of someone in the Protestant Christian church, that's non-Catholic, the average age is 50 years old. The Southern Baptist denomination, they're 54. For the Episcopal Church, they're 56. For the United Methodist Church, the average age is 57. And for the Presbyterian Church, the average age is 59 years old. Why is that? Well, the Southern Baptist Council on Life reported in a 2002 study that 88% of the children in evangelical homes left the church after age 18. If 88% of our kids and youth end up leaving our church once they turn 18, our church is going to end up like so many others. Accurate statistics they're somewhat difficult to come by, but to the best I could find, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 churches close each year. Some of that is because they're small church plants that have just started and they just don't make it. But a large portion of that number are churches that are literally dying off. I'm actually very close to somebody who is a pastor. He's been a pastor for about a decade. He's conducted over 100 funerals in less than 10 weddings. That's a denomination of churches that are dying because their children are leaving the church. We don't want that for our church, and we certainly don't want that for our children. Even when we look at our church, our average age has begun to creep up just a little bit. When my family started coming here about 10 years ago, the majority of adults were in their late 20s or early 30s. The majority of the kids then were newborns to early elementary school. Now when I look around, you guys seem to have gotten a little bit older. I don't know how that happened when I've stayed so young, but here we are. And while we don't have the exact numbers, we begin to see a slight shift in our under 18s, with our number of elementary school dropping just slightly and our number of our youth increasing just a little bit. Now, some of that is because our youth have been inviting their friends outside the church in, but some of it is because our elementary have been moving up to youth group at a faster rate than they're being replaced in elementary age. So as a church, we'll constantly choose to be family focused by investing in our kids and our youth and making Crossbridge a welcoming place for them and their families, because they are the ones that we're going to charge with carrying out our vision of loving God, loving people, and serving the world in the future. Now, before we go any further, I actually want to take a moment and I want to recognize and thank every single one of you that give your time and your energy serving in CB Kids and CB Youth. I know that trying to keep up with our kids can be trying at times, because just keeping up with one is hard for me a lot. So I appreciate every single one of you that love and help support me as a parent by not only helping our kids take their own step forward in their faith, but to help support me as a parent by providing another voice of encouragement in my child's life. It means the world to me, knowing that there are other adults who care for my daughter and are showing her what love looks like. And for those of you who work with our youth, thank you guys. I know how much time and energy that takes. It takes hours on Sunday nights. It takes time on Wednesday nights a lot of times. It takes time during the week texting our kids, communing with our kids, loving them, praying for them, going on events with them. I know how much you invest, and thank you, because I know how much it pays off for them. I see how it affects their lives. I grin from ear to ear every time I see how many of them got baptized and have started to begin to own their own faith. Or they're here serving because they know how important it is. Or they simply are showing God's love to other people. I see how much your investment means to them. It means to their families as well. Thank you for investing in them and loving them. For those that might not be plugged in somewhere serving, or maybe you've been thinking about helping out in one of these ministries, I urge you to run, not walk, and talk to Becky and Will about joining these ministries. Because the amount of joy that you're going to get serving our students and our kids is just unbelievable. And our kids and our parents can always use more voices pouring into our kids. It affects their lives, it changes them, and it changes the future of our church. So when we talk about Crossbridge's core values, our bumpers guiding what we focus and what we do to enact our vision. And we talk about being family focused in practice. That means if you're here, you're family. All are welcome to come and be a part of our family. We support nuclear families, and we invest in our kids and our youth. And we don't invest just in our kids and our youth. We do invest in everybody, but we are going to focus on them because of how important they are and just how many are in this area. Family looks different in different eras. It looks different in different cultures. And it looks different for each one of us. But for those who choose to take those steps in their faith towards Jesus, Jesus makes it clear through his teachings that we now belong to a larger family. We belong to his family. We want each person here to be a part of our family. And we want our family to grow by inviting others into it. Crossbridge will be family focused because that's what Jesus calls us to be, because we see it all throughout the Bible how important family is. So at Crossbridge, we will be family focused. And we'll do it by inviting others in to grow our family. We're going to do it by loving each other. We're going to do it by investing in the families, by parents and kids in our church. That is who we are going to be at Crossbridge. And I love it because by doing that, we assure that our church will continue to grow, to expand our vision of loving people, loving God, and serving the world. Will you all pray with me? Father, I thank you that we can refer to you as Father. That what you call for us is to be part of your family. Whatever our family looks like, God, no matter how much hurt we've had maybe by those who we thought we could call family, God, I ask that you will help us to look at you and to call you Father, to take our steps in our faith to you, to join your family, to be part of your family, and understand that our family isn't just who is blood, but our family, God, is much bigger than that. That we are your sons and daughters, that is our identity, that our identity is a sons and daughter of the Father who calls all to be part of his table. And God, I ask that you will help us to continue to always call others into our family to join us, to always grow our family. And that, God, that we will support each other here, that we will support the family that you've brought to us, God. And that we can love each other, that we can support each other, we can support relationships, we can support marriages, we can support parents, we can support the kids, God, that we can all do this for the glory of your kingdom, so that in the end, God, you are the one that's honored, you are the one that's served, and that people's lives are changed through this, that people feel your love, they feel support, that their lives are changed because they know who they are. They know that they are your sons and your daughters. Thank you that you call us that, God, and that your love is poured out on us in such an amazing way. Help us to always be family-focused at Crossbridge, so that we can pour that love onto others, that they may understand that identity as well. In your heavenly name,